Basically, Asia has grown enormously since the war. And since the 1960s, the pace of growth has been tremendous. When we talk about development in Asia, I think what it means is seldom understood in developed countries like the United States and Europe. It's really about really basic things. We still have many villages throughout Asia that don't have electricity, they don't have tap water. So really simple things. Those are the first priorities. Education is another huge priority. Even when we talk about electrification, China has done tremendously well. Most of our country has electrification. However, it doesn't mean poor people in villages can afford to turn the lights on for too long. So when we talk about development, we're really talking about the basic. We're not yet talking about billions of Asians being consumers in the same way as Americans or Europeans. For many, many people in developing Asia, we're still talking about the basics. So you can see when Asians look at this notion of exports for the developed world, and the developed world saying to Asia, gosh, you guys are growing very quickly. And when we talk about the environment, which is something that I care about a lot, people look at Asia as, we're going to bust the planet. Well, this is not necessarily true. If we adopt your lifestyles, we're all finished. So we need to think about how we're going to develop. Now, this is a critical question for Asia, and I don't think this is a question the developed world understands. What we say in Asia is that the right to development is non-negotiable. But it is possible to make choices, make hard choices, that provides for much more environmentally sustainable development. So I put this issue out there because this is one of the key debate between the developed world and the developing world. And when we look at the financial architecture, what we see is, of course, finance. We need capital to grow. What we invest that money in is of critical importance. You will see a lot of discussion, commentators talk about, now excuse me if I'm wrong, they will say what Americans want to do is to spend their way out of problem. It's not about a politics where Americans are encouraged to save so that they can invest in basic infrastructure, in human resources, in education, and so on. I don't know if this is correct or not. This is just what I read. In Asia, because that's what we read, we say, yes, Americans should save more. But of course, the conundrum is, well, they're going to buy less. If they're going to buy less, what's going to happen to our exporting industries? So we're kind of caught in this embrace. And you will see commentators talking about Asians have got to get out of this crisis by consuming. Question mark, what does consuming means? We can consume material things, but we can also consume in terms of investing in what we desperately need in Asia. In Asia, we still need to deal with public health, with basic education, with basic infrastructure. These are the things we need to invest in. But these are not always the things that our politicians would necessarily invest in first. Basic infrastructure sometimes cannot be seen. Big buildings, large highways, these are the things that can be seen. Somehow, there's another global consensus amongst politicians is they like to build big things. So they can show people, I've done something. Investing in soft infrastructure that promotes human development, this is hard. This is hard in the West, in the East, in the North, and in the South. But this is what we really need to do. The other thing about countries when they talk to each other is the notion of national interest. There's one part of international relations studies that is deeply cynical. Now, some people would say deeply realistic, and I wouldn't argue against that. Every country sees that it has a national interest, whatever that interest may be. And their negotiators are trained to protect the national interest.